Hey guys, it's Eric from D in the Garage. This is my 1993 Jeep Grand Cherokee named Barney. You've now joined us for another episode of Build is the Barney. And, not Build is the Barney, the Build of Barney, the Jeep just won't die. I really like that little saying for it. But, I'm here today to talk to you about electric fan conversions on ZJs and even Cherokees or any accoutrement of Jeep, because most people use the same fan. And that is a Taurus electric fan that Ford graciously designed us back in the early 90s. So this fan here came from the U-Pull. As you know, I'm a junkyard dog and I don't like buying things at retail. So I went to the U-Pull up actually in Marcy, New York, I guess over a year ago now. And I went on the hunt for about 2 trips. And the second trip, I couldn't find any Tauruses. Actually, if you guys don't know, if you're not into big yards, Tauruses are actually getting harder and harder to find because they just crush them really fast. The early 90s, there were a dime a dozen. Not a lot of people drive them anymore because they didn't last that long. And they end up just being harder and harder to find. So I had to kind of branch out where the typical areas where you would find one. I started looking in the Ford minivans because my theory was that, well, they all use the same motor. Ford Tauruses and Mercury Sables came with 3.0s or 3.8s. Same thing with the Mercury Villager, which was their minivan series. Now, funny part is the Mercury Villager also is the sister car to a Nissan Quest. That point in time, the Ford and Nissan were sharing platforms and just producing the same vehicle with different tag names. But they both had the same motors, 3.0 and 3.8. Lo and behold, when I went and looked underneath the hood, I happened to find an electric fan that was very similar to what came in the Ford Tauruses. They're a 2-way fan, which means there's a high and a low, and that's when you look for the 3 wires. So you look here, I've got my ground, I've got my low, and then I got my high. Once you put power to the low setting, you'll get low fan speed. You go to the high speed setting, you get high. At low, you're running about 2,800 or a little lower, probably more closer to 2,000 CFMs. And at high, you're running around 3,400, what I can find on the internet. That's with a good, practically brand new electric fan. One warning I will give you: if you go to a junkyard, I did not do it that day, test the fan for noise. And I don't know if you can hear it, but let's see. Kind of hear a clicking. Yeah, the bearings were bad in this when I picked up the fan. And it was part of the problem of why this failed and why I actually didn't put it back on. I didn't like the reliability of it, just because it can break any point, and then I don't have anything to cool my truck with besides driving up and down the road doing like 60 with the heat on and the windows down. And the way I use my car, I don't need that. So that's why, number one, why this is not still in my Jeep. But tips and tricks of installing it, let's get to there. So the one from the van was slightly different than the one that's in the electric, than a Taurus. It is a little bigger. As you can see, there's a lot of cuts on the edges here. Well, that's because I had to basically make it the size of a Taurus fan. From what I read online, because I never actually had one, this is the actual size of Taurus fan. It's supposed to be 21 by 17 by 4.5 inch deep. And this is about 4.5 now, because there was actually a shield on this that was held on these 3 rib nuts, and I popped it off and took the shield off and then cut the nuts down the sides. You can see there, I cut them down. Now, when installing this, I cut it down to basically where it fit as the same part as my fan shroud. You basically want to mimic what your fan shroud is to your radiator, because you want to form a seal against the radiator to pull the air through. You just have big open gaps, you're really just going to be pulling in the around air that's not cooling the radiator. And that's a really bad thing to do when you're trying to cool your motor. So, with that, I produced this kind of rounded off section up here, rounded off section down there, and then I had planned to put weather stripping down the sides to seal it to the radiator. And that's what I really suggest is the big tip there, is when you don't leave this gap against the radiator, get the swishable house foam if you can. They usually sell it for like $1, and I'll put a screenshot what to get. It's like window weather stripping. And just put a strip down, and then it will squeeze itself for a nice tight seal. So after getting this off and your mech fan out, you're going to have to feed your nuts back on for the water pump. Now, there's one thing you guys got to remember when doing this. Actually, let's back up a little bit. Before even leaving the yard, I forgot to make this note, you need to pull one other thing to make your life a hell of a lot easier, and that is the other side of the plug for the Taurus fan. Doing that makes it easy for wiring, because then you have 3 other wires here that you just plug into a nice factory connector. You can butt connect these to your electrical. So back to doing the actual conversion itself. So you take out your fan shroud, you take out your mech fan, and now you're getting ready to put this in. You cut this up, you fit it all out. You're gonna have to notice that when you took out your mech fan, you don't have any nuts now on your water pump pulley to hold everything in position. So what you need to do there is actually feed the nuts that were on the mech fan back on and tighten them down, and then you're gonna have to grind the tips of the studs off very carefully with a Dremel or with a friend. Be careful, make sure everyone's watching that you don't hit your radiator. I actually did something to protect myself. Bringing back the cardboard, I cut a very similar piece to this and slid it in front of my radiator, and that's a really good tip if you're ever working in front of the in between the radiator and the motor. You don't want to punch a hole in your radiator. Get a piece of cardboard, slip it down, tape it on, and then you have a good, nice protection for your radiator if you slip or do anything that you don't really want to do to a sealed system of liquid. So I did that. I pulled this out, took my mech fan off, and cut all 4 water pump studs down so that they didn't hit this part. And that's why I took that shield off, as I mentioned before. I took the shield off of this right here. You can see, like, I cut studs here and here. Bring you real close. You can see grind marks because the clearances down there are really tight when you feed this in. It does fit. When you get down there and you get screwed all in nice and tight, it doesn't move. And that's why you have these little L brackets. I bought some little 2-inch steel and some zip screws and just did it in my top radiator mount here, and then zipped down. And that's pretty much the install of it for keeping it straight and simple. It's not a hard mod to do. I really suggest it. It's cheap. It did work on my truck. I'll keep some cooling numbers. I would only experience with it never overheated with this in it. What ended up happening to me is that my dad ran out to the middle of Pennsylvania before I could modify the wiring from my dedicated on-off switch, and it never got a chance to turn off. So it was running for 2 hours straight, back and forth, so 4 hours with a bad bearing. So it just kind of blew itself out and then really didn't cool efficient anymore. So that was really on my fault. Like I said, when you're at the junkyard, make sure to really test it. Make sure that the bearings sound nice and quiet, the fan's quiet, doesn't seem to struggle. Make sure it's cooling. You can actually get one of the CFM meters off of Amazon for like 15-20 bucks. If you want to do this project, it might be worth it. Or just order a brand new fan off Rock Auto. I think there might be like $70-$60. They're really not that expensive. I was being really cheap and I shouldn't have. But my biggest problem with the electrical fan, like I said before, is this reliability of it. Once it dies, you're stuck. You got to turn the heat on, roll the windows down, and just sweat yourself out until you get home to where you're going. Even then, that might not work if you got a hole in the back. So that's why I really stuck with a mech fan. It really made a big difference for me. If you have any questions on how I cut it up and all that stuff, I mean, it's taking your time, really. And I know I keep doing these videos where I actually don't do anything, but I did a lot of stuff that you guys didn't get to see on this, and I want to show you and tell you about it, where my pain points were. So cutting this up was easy. Installing the brackets were easy. I just put these to the little 1-inch strips in a vise and bent it over the hammer, mimicked it again, and then drilled it on, and it sat real nice and tight and wouldn't move. I think I did put a zip tie at the bottom just to hold it in place so it wouldn't go like this. So yeah, that's really the install of this. Now let's talk about wiring this. There's some things Doug was actually impressed that I wanted to do with wiring this. So as I showed you before, this is what I started off with. This job originally was done in very much haste. It was like a Friday night. I showed up at Doug's house like 9 o'clock at night, And so let's do this. We didn't have the time to really do it, so we ended up rushing the job, and I had to go home and kind of get it done. So I ended up just running a straight hot wire with a relay, that guy right there, onto the positive, another relay for the switch, and the plug. And this had a switch that literally sat underneath my hood. And anytime you had to go anywhere, I actually ran it to right here where my plow wires are, and you just clicked it on, and it worked for a while that way. I mean, if I needed to use a Jeep, it worked. But in the end, the fan failed, and then I had to swap it back out. And also, it really, like under load, I just felt better with my mech fan, because I did the heavy duty mech fan first. The HD fan made a big difference versus the electric fan, because as I kept going up on heavy loads, my motor speed would go up and it would cool my motor. It's still engaged. I mean, electric fan can only go as fast as the motor exceeds. I can rev my motor out to 5 grand, and the fan will be spitting at what? I think it's 30% less of that RPM. Like, it's that you're getting a lot of CFMs. I mean, I think when I looked it up in my last video, I think it's over 4,000 CFMs in the mech fan if I kept the stock blades, and it really did a good job. A lot of you mentioned in the last video that a cooling problem could be my condenser, and you're probably all right. I just didn't think about it. I was a big old dummy. I'm now thinking about replacing it because you guys said it, and if I'm gonna do that, I might as well put a new pump on this thing and have a nice air conditioner, right? But yeah, let's get back to wiring. So I threw this on, and this is garbage. I'll admit to you, 100% hot garbage. That wiring sucks, just much like my winch wiring that's still sitting here. Really, I'm gonna show you right here. You want to get one of these. What that is a temperature diode that you stuff in your top radiator hose. You pull off your top radiator hose, and you feed the diode into here, and you feed the metal wire back to a safe location that's nice and water sealed if you can find it, or away from water. Then with that, you run the power in your relay to that box that I showed you before, and I'll get another box here to show it, picture. Because I had one, I don't know where I put it. So I'm gonna keep saying picture when I need to put a picture. But so then you have a dial on there that you can basically control when the fan kicks on, because that diode that you ran into your cooling hose is actually a temperature diode. So it recognizes a certain temperature and then clicks on the fan via that little control box. I was also gonna run a secondary spot to my AC switch inside the cab. And actually, it was going to be a three-way switch wiring scheme. I was going to have one hot switch that basically, if I needed it, I can kick it on. I was going to have one that connected to the AC button on the dash of my HVAC controls. And when you click that, it would turn on because I would want cold air conditioning. Now the AC is there, kind of mute. The AC is not there, kind of mute point. But I would want it at the point in time my air conditioning was still working. So it was like, I would like that to still be an option that, you know, I don't have to, like, it worked like a normal car. Like, you turn the defrost on, guess what? Your electric fan kicks on. You know, you turn the air conditioning on, electric fan kicks on, because it needs to pull air through the condenser and the radiator to cool your condenser and cool the air. So that was the extra part I really wanted to mention to you guys, that, you know, you really want to think about your wiring the way you need it. So you want, like, whatever your needs are. Like for me, I needed the box to automatically do it, so anyone else driving the truck wouldn't have to think about it. Then I also needed it up in the cab for air conditioning, so I wanted to cool my air coming in for air conditioning. And then I want a dedicated switch just in case something of these lines fail. Like, a lot of people just throw things on and know, why is it not working, or why is it failing? It's because you didn't think it all the way through. And that's really my biggest suggestion with this mod. I know it's a light video on really high level stuff about it, and you can put it in the comments, questions, concerns, what you want. But honestly, a Taurus fan is a really simple install as long as you think it out and really think out what you need from it. For me, I thought about it and it might have fit my needs, but really in the end it didn't, and I need to go back to mech fan. For a regular, like, off-roader, if you're just on the trail, you're not really driving it much, electric fan might just do, because you know what, you're not moving, you're not high revving the motor. On a trail, you're sitting there just at low idle speeds, crawling 9 times out of 10. So you need that 3,000 CFMs. Like, you need that pull of air just instantly. So that's really where, like, you got to think out what you need. As simple as that. But anyways, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, you guys know what to do. Hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment below. It's Eric from D in the Garage. Make sure to check out all our accoutrement, our our Facebook page, our Instagram, our Etsy shop, all the good stuff we provide for you guys. A short, sweet episode of the Build a Barney. I know some of you guys will leave some bad comments probably below because it's not really wrenching yet, and I'm going to get to it. Trust me, the next episode I got a couple plans I need to start getting done before winter falls on me. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.